The war came without warning. The skies above Earth burned as alien warships, vast, angular behemoths of impossible design, descended upon the planet. The invaders, known as the Zorvath Dominion, had crushed a dozen civilizations before humanity even knew they existed. Their arrival was not a declaration of war, but an execution order. To them, Earth was just another nameless world to be pacified and harvested. They had every advantage: technology centuries beyond anything humanity possessed, fleets large enough to blot out the sun, and weapons that turned armored tanks into slag with a single pulse. Their biomechanical foot soldiers, the Dratheks, were nightmarish, hulking creatures of flesh and metal, programmed to exterminate resistance with merciless precision. The battle should have been over in hours. But it wasn't. Humanity did not surrender. From the rubble of Earth's cities, survivors fought back with whatever they could muster. Soldiers, police, and even civilians waged guerrilla war. They adapted. They improvised. They sacrificed. Where other species had crumbled under Zorvath oppression, humans became something the Dominion had never encountered before, *an enemy that refused to die, *. #The last stand at Terran High Command. Major Elias Kane wiped blood and soot from his face as he sprinted through the shattered corridors of the underground command bunker. Explosions thundered above, shaking the very foundation of the Earth itself. The defenses of High Command, once the nerve center of humanity's planetary defense network, were failing. Kane burst into the war room, where the last remnants of Earth's leadership gathered around flickering holodisplays. General Irina Volkov, a battle-hardened veteran with steel-gray hair, turned to him. "Tell me we still have options, Major," she demanded. "We do," Kane said grimly, "but they're getting worse by the second." The reports were dire. Earth's fleet had been annihilated in orbit. The last remaining strongholds, London, Beijing, New York, had fallen. Billions were dead or dying. And yet, amidst the despair, humanity had dealt unexpected blows to the enemy. The turning point, the Battle of Nova Alexandria. A live feed showed the aftermath of a recent battle in the African sector, near the underground city of Nova Alexandria. A small group of resistance fighters had detonated an entire Zorvath dreadnought from the inside by smuggling nuclear warheads onto it. The explosion had rippled across the sky, setting off chain reactions that destroyed 3 other warships. It was an impossible victory, achieved through sheer audacity and human ingenuity. General Volkov's lips curled into a rare, grim smile. "They think we're beaten," she muttered. "They think we're broken." Kane nodded. "Let's show them just how wrong they are." The spark of defiance. In the shadows of occupied cities, resistance cells emerged, striking back at their invaders in unpredictable, ruthless ways. Humanity had no advanced energy weapons, no impenetrable shields, but they had something more valuable. They had cunning. They had fury. And most of all, they had nothing left to lose. Sabotage teams infiltrated enemy supply depots, hijacked Zorvath technology, and repurposed alien weapons. They turned the ruins of their own world into a battlefield the invaders couldn't control. The Zorvath, a species accustomed to swift and total victories, found themselves in a nightmarish war of attrition. Their advanced war machines were mighty in open battle, but in the underground tunnels, in the burning husks of cities, in the darkness where humans struck without warning, the machines burned. But it wasn't enough. Earth was still dying. A desperate gamble, humanity's last fleet. With time running out, the remnants of Earth's military made a desperate move. A handful of surviving warships, barely space-worthy, had been hidden away in deep-sea bunkers and remote lunar facilities. They weren't enough to win a war, but they might be enough to escape one, A plan formed. They would gather the last remnants of the resistance, salvage whatever they could, and take the fight into space. If Earth was lost, then humanity's war would not end here, it would only change battlefields. The last fleet would carry their warriors beyond the reach of the Dominion, into uncharted space, where they would rebuild. And one day, they would return. As Major Kane prepared for what could be humanity's final exodus, he clenched his fist. The Zorvath thought they had won. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The last fleet of humanity had no right to survive. Crippled warships, barely held together with scavenged parts, drifted through the void, their engines struggling to stay alight. Aboard the Sovereign Dawn, Major Elias Kane stood on the bridge, watching Earth shrink into the darkness behind them. Fires still raged across the planet's surface, marking the scars of a war humanity had lost. Or so the Zorvath believed. The enemy's forces had been too busy crushing the last remnants of Earth's resistance to notice the true threat slipping through their fingers. Against impossible odds, a ragtag fleet, cobbled together from hidden lunar bases, deep-sea bunkers, and last-minute evacuations, had broken through the Dominion's orbital blockade. It wasn't a retreat. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. ###the pursuit begins. Multiple contacts on our tail, shouted Lieutenant Aria Vasquez, her fingers flying over the sensor console. Zorvath hunter-killers, fast movers, closing at 20,000 clicks per second. Kane's jaw tightened. The Dominion had finally realized what was happening, and now they were coming to finish the job. The Sovereign Dawn's captain, Admiral Darius Cole, exhaled sharply. We can't outrun them forever. We're flying junk compared to those ships. Kane's eyes flickered with cold determination. Then we make sure we're not an easy kill. ###the ambush at the dead zone. With no advanced weapons and no reinforced shielding, humanity had to fight dirty. Their only advantage? Their ability to think outside the cold, calculated logic of war machines. Using the wreckage of Earth's shattered defense satellites, Kane devised a trap. The fleet cut their engines and drifted into a debris field, where human engineers had hastily rigged what little nuclear ordnance remained into crude but deadly proximity mines. The Dominion's ships surged in, their sleek forms cutting through space like obsidian blades. To them, this was a simple extermination. The moment they entered the debris field, Kane gave the order. Detonate everything. Blinding light flashed in the void as nuclear fire consumed the enemy vessels. The closest ships were obliterated instantly, others were crippled by the shockwaves and cascading debris. A handful of survivors, damaged, reeling, were easy prey for the scavenged railguns of the human fleet. 3 Zorvath hunter-killers had chased them in. None made it out. ### salvaging the enemy's strength. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had claimed a real victory. But victories were worthless without a future to fight for. Aboard the wreckage of a disabled Zorvath vessel, scavenger teams moved quickly, stripping it for anything useful. Human engineers worked tirelessly to adapt alien technology, turning their failing ships into something far more dangerous. Dr. Rina Okoye, a leading scientist on the Sovereign Dawn, examined a recovered power core, her eyes burning with excitement. This could change everything, she whispered. The Zorvath had believed their technology was beyond human comprehension. Humanity had other ideas. ### the birth of the Phoenix Initiative. As the fleet limped toward the uncharted reaches of space, Admiral Cole called a war council. We cannot run forever, he said. Earth may be gone, but humanity is not finished. We have proven that today. Kane stepped forward, his voice ironclad. If the Zorvath think they've won, let's remind them why humanity is different. We don't bow. We don't break. We adapt. The fleet's engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to reverse engineer stolen Zorvath technology, improving their ships, their weapons, their tactics. If humanity could not match the enemy in numbers, they would surpass them in ingenuity. This was no longer just survival. This was war. And humanity would not stop until the Dominion burned. The fleet had no home. No allies. No reinforcements. But they had a mission. Drifting through the void, hidden in the shattered remains of a long-dead moon, the remnants of humanity prepared their first counterattack against the Zorvath Dominion. Their target, Krythos 4, a heavily fortified mining colony deep within enemy space. Krythos 4 was critical to the Dominion's war machine. It supplied the exotic materials that powered their fleets and weapons. If humanity wanted to stand a chance in this war, they had to do more than survive, they had to hurt the enemy. And this would be their first lesson in asymmetric warfare. #### a plan of madness. Admiral Cole studied the tactical display aboard the Sovereign Dawn. Krythos 4 was a fortress, defended by automated orbital cannons, shielded landing zones, and a standing garrison of Drathek enforcers. A full frontal assault was suicide. But Kane wasn't interested in a full frontal assault. "We don't need to fight their army," Kane said. "We just need to make the place unlivable." Dr. Okoye and her scientists had been working on a repurposed Zorvath energy core, salvaged from the last battle. With some modifications, they had turned it into a highly unstable bomb. A detonating star bomb, one that could tear through Zorvath shielding and ignite the volatile mineral deposits deep within Krythos 4's crust. The plan was simple. 1. Infiltrate Krythos 4 using a stolen Zorvath transport. 2. Plant the bomb in the main refinery. 3. Get out before the entire planet turns into a fireball. Simple. But not easy. #### insertion into hell. Kane led the strike team, an elite group of resistance fighters, engineers, and hackers, aboard the stolen transport. With freshly forged access codes and just enough Zorvath technology integrated into their systems, they bluffed their way past the outer defenses. The moment they landed in the refinery district, they moved fast. Aria Vasquez and her hackers cracked into the Dominion's security grid, feeding false data to enemy patrols. Combat specialists like Lieutenant Ro Takeda quietly neutralized any threats along the way. Within 20 minutes, they were deep inside the refinery, placing the bomb. Then it all went to hell. #### the trap is sprung. A Zorvath overseer, a monstrous, 8-foot-tall warlord with gleaming obsidian armor, stormed into the control room. "You vermin thought we would not see through your deception?" its guttural voice snarled. Security alarms blared. Automated turrets descended from the ceiling. Drathek enforcers surged forward, their glowing weapons carving the air. Kane ducked behind cover as gunfire erupted. "Vasquez! We're blown! Get that bomb prepped now!" Vasquez, hands flying across the detonator panel, shouted back, "We need 2 more minutes." They didn't have 2 minutes. Kane grabbed a fallen Drathek's energy rifle and unleashed hell, covering the engineers as they worked. Takeda moved like a ghost, cutting through enemy ranks with brutal precision. The team fought like demons, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. Then the orbital bombardment started. #### the fire rains down. The Sovereign Dawn, hiding behind Krythos 4's third moon, had been waiting for Kane's signal. Now, seeing the team compromised, Cole made a snap decision. Begin bombardment. Full spread. High above, scavenged human warships unleashed a devastating salvo of railgun fire and repurposed Zorvath plasma torpedoes. Explosions ripped across the colony, sowing chaos among enemy ranks. Inside the refinery, the walls shook as fire and debris rained down. "We're primed!" Vasquez screamed. "We gotta move!" The team bolted for the evac point as the bomb's countdown reached its final seconds. Dratheks pursued them, but now the entire planet was collapsing, tunnels caving in, firestorms igniting the skies. Just as they reached the stolen transport, the detonating star bomb went off. #### the planet dies. The blast was unlike anything Kane had ever seen. A blinding, expanding wave of energy cracked Krythos 4's crust like glass. The underground mineral deposits ignited, sending a planetary firestorm raging across its surface. From orbit, the Zorvath fleet watched in horror as their prized mining world, the heart of their war industry, was swallowed in an unstoppable inferno. Humanity had struck its first true blow. And the Dominion had finally begun to fear them. #Aftermath, the cost of victory. The fleet escaped into deep space, battered but victorious. For the first time, the Zorvath had not just lost a battle, they had been outplayed. But victory came at a cost. Many of Kane's team hadn't made it. Krythos, had burned, but so had their illusions of easy victories. The Dominion would come back with vengeance. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge, watching the wreckage drift through space. "They'll be hunting us now," he said. Kane nodded. "Good. Let them." Humanity wasn't just running anymore. They weren't just surviving. They were winning. The Zorvath had been humiliated. For the first time in their empire's long history of conquest, a species they had considered inferior had struck a devastating blow against them. Krythos, once a stronghold of their war machine, was nothing more than a burning graveyard. And the Dominion did not tolerate defiance. From the cold heart of their empire, Supreme Warlord Ketzer issued a single, ruthless command: eradicate the human remnants. Exterminate them to the last, A fleet was mobilized, one unlike any sent before. No longer was this a routine pacification. This was vengeance. And the full weight of the Dominion's fury was about to crash down upon humanity. The hunt begins. Aboard the Sovereign Dawn, Admiral Darius Cole reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Zorvath warships were sweeping the sector, tracking hyperspace distortions and scanning every known refuge. "They're closing in," Cole muttered. Kane, standing beside him, clenched his fists. "We always knew they'd come after us." "They're not just coming after us," Vasquez said from the intelligence console. She projected a star map, highlighting recent Zorvath fleet movements. "They're purging entire systems, wiping out anything that might have helped us." On the display, colony worlds flickered out one by one, independent settlements, trade outposts, even alien species that had dared to trade with human refugees. "All of them, gone. They're making sure we have no allies," Vasquez whispered. Kane's jaw tightened. "Then we need to find some before it's too late." Seeking the unlikeliest of allies. Humanity had always stood alone, but now they needed something more than defiance. They needed an army. Dr. Rina Okoye, their lead scientist, proposed a radical idea, one that had the entire War Council divided. "There's one force that hates the Zorvath as much as we do," she said. "The Vierak." The room fell silent. The Vierak were a species of war beasts, massive, reptilian titans bred for destruction. Once a mighty empire, they had been shattered decades ago by the Dominion and reduced to nomadic warbands. They were brutal, unpredictable, and just as likely to kill their allies as their enemies. But they were also some of the best warriors in the galaxy. "If we can convince them to fight alongside us," Okoye continued, "we might actually stand a chance." Cole exhaled. "And if we fail? They kill us on sight." The meeting on Bloodstone. A risky plan was set in motion. The fleet set course for Bloodstone, an asteroid fortress ruled by one of the most notorious Vierak warlords, High Chieftain Vokrath the Unbroken, The Sovereign Dawn entered the asteroid's chaotic orbit, its crew tense as they were surrounded by Vierak warships. These were not sleek, elegant vessels like the Zorvathas, they were monstrous, jagged things, more akin to floating fortresses than starships. The team, Kane, Vasquez, and Okoye, descended into the warlord's throne chamber, a brutal hall carved from the bones of fallen enemies. At the center sat Vokrath himself, a towering figure covered in battle scars, his yellow eyes gleaming with amusement as he regarded the humans before him. "You come to beg, soft ones?" he growled. Kane stepped forward, unflinching. "We came to offer you a war." The Vierak warbands had been scattered for years, their people forced into hiding by the Zorvath. Kane knew what they craved more than anything: revenge. "If you fight with us," Kane said, "we don't just give you battle. We give you a chance to burn the Zorvath to the ground." The Vierak chieftains muttered amongst themselves. Some looked intrigued. Others skeptical. Then Vokrath grinned, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. You wish to fight like Vierak? He rumbled. Then prove yourselves. #### trial by combat. There would be no alliances without blood. The Vierak only respected strength, and if humanity wanted their help, they had to earn it. Cain was thrown into an arena alongside Takeda and 2 other human warriors. Their opponents? 3 massive Vierak gladiators, armed with serrated axes and plasma blades. The fight was brutal. Takeda, a master of close-quarters combat, danced between the towering warriors, striking with precision while dodging their monstrous blows. Cain fought like a cornered animal, using speed, tactics, and sheer human tenacity to wear his enemies down. In the end, bleeding but victorious, the humans stood while the Vierak champions lay defeated. Vokrath roared with laughter. You are not as soft as I thought, human, he said. Perhaps, you are worthy of war. #### The alliance forged in fire. With the Vierak warbands at their side, humanity had gained a crucial edge. What had started as a desperate struggle for survival was now transforming into something more. A rebellion. A crusade. But as the human fleet and their new Vierak allies prepared for the next phase of their war, a chilling transmission reached the Sovereign Dawn. A single message, broadcast on all channels. A familiar, monstrous voice. We have found you. The Dominion's war fleet had arrived. The Dominion had come. Zorvath warships, sleek and deadly, filled the abyss of space, an armada stretching beyond sight. Their flagship, Judgment of Ketzer, loomed at the center, a leviathan of destruction. Supreme Warlord Ketzer himself had taken command, determined to wipe humanity from existence. Aboard the Sovereign Dawn, alarms blared. Tactical displays flickered with grim projections. The Dominion's fleet was nearly 10 times their size. For any other species, this would have been the end. For humanity, it was just another impossible fight. #####, no escape, no surrender. Admiral Cole stood at the command deck, his face grim. There's no running from this one, he said. Cain nodded, eyes locked on the incoming fleet. Good. The Vierak warbands, now sworn to humanity's cause, stood ready. Their fleet, hulking warbarges and brutal, spiked cruisers, was crude compared to the Dominion's sleek precision. But they were built for war. Vokrath grinned over the comms. We will paint the stars with their blood. Cole exhaled. Let's give them hell. #### The ambush. The Dominion expected a desperate retreat. Instead, humanity struck first. Vasquez and her team had been preparing for this moment, hiding repurposed Zorvath stealth drones along the asteroid field. As the Dominion fleet advanced, those drones activated, projecting false sensor readings. For a moment, the Zorvath hesitated. Something was wrong. And in that moment, the humans and Vierak attacked. From the asteroid field, scavenged human warships and Vierak raiders surged forward, ambushing the enemy's vanguard. Sovereign Dawn fired its newly integrated plasma lances, ripping through Dominion frigates. Vierak warbarges rammed into enemy ships, boarding them in brutal hand-to-hand combat. It was chaos. And for the first time, the Dominion reeled. #### The cost of defiance. But the Zorvath were not fools. The Judgment of Ketzer unleashed a retaliatory strike, launching waves of hunter-killer drones and precision plasma barrages. Ships exploded in fire and shrapnel. The Vierak lost an entire warband in minutes. Then came the dreadnoughts. Massive, fortress-like warships, their weapons capable of shredding moons, pushed into the battle, cutting through humanity's forces. On the bridge of the Sovereign Dawn, warning lights flared red. Cole gritted his teeth. We're losing ships too fast. Cain's mind raced. They needed something, anything to turn the tide. And then Okoye's voice cut through the chaos. I have an idea. Hashtag the Doomsday Gambit. Okoye had been studying the Zorvath dreadnoughts for weeks, and she'd found their flaw. Their reactors ran on hypercompressed dark matter cores, unstable if ruptured in just the right way. If they could detonate one dreadnought, the explosion could trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. But getting close enough to do that? Suicide mission, Vasquez muttered. Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. Then we better make it count. Hashtag into the heart of the beast. A strike team, Kane, Takeda, Vasquez, and a handful of Vierak warriors, boarded a stolen Zorvath assault pod. Under the chaos of battle, they blasted toward the nearest dreadnought, dodging debris and enemy fire. The impact was brutal. They crashed through the outer hull, storming into the ship's corridors with weapons blazing. The Zorvath fought savagely. The corridors ran slick with blood. The Vierak warriors tore through enemy ranks with primal fury, while Kane and Takeda moved with lethal precision. As they neared the reactor core, alarms screamed. The ship's AI had detected them. Security lockdown engaged. Vasquez hacked into the system, bypassing firewalls while Kane and Takeda held the line. Almost there, Vasquez gritted out. Just keep. A massive Zorvath warlord, Ketzer's own champion charged through the bulkhead. Takeda met him head-on. The duel was brutal. The warlord fought with crushing strength, but Takeda was faster. Weaving through strikes, he landed precise, cutting blows. But the Zorvath was relentless, slamming Takeda against the wall with a bone-breaking impact. Kane didn't hesitate. He emptied his entire rifle clip into the warlord's back, dropping the beast. Takeda coughed blood but nodded. Finish it. Hashtag the turning point. The reactor core was primed. All that was left was detonation. Setting overload sequence, Vasquez said. 5 minutes until implosion. They fought their way back to the pod as the ship began to die. Explosions rocked the hulls. Fires raged. As they launched back into space, the dreadnought erupted in a blinding shockwave. Then, chain reaction, One by one, nearby Dominion warships were caught in the blast, their own reactors destabilizing. In the chaos, the Vierak fleet pressed forward. They smelled blood. The Zorvath formation collapsed. Hashtag the aftermath, a broken enemy. On the bridge of the judgment of Ketzer, the supreme warlord watched in horror. His grand armada, the fleet meant to annihilate humanity, was in ruins. His dreadnoughts gone. His forces scattered. And worst of all? The humans still lived. He clenched his massive fists, his rage boiling. This is not possible. But it was. Humanity had done the impossible again. And now? Now, the war had changed. The galaxy had witnessed something unthinkable. Humanity had defied the unstoppable. The Battle of the Void was supposed to be their extinction. Instead, it had become their ascendancy. The Zorvath Dominion had suffered its first true defeat in centuries. Not a retreat, not a stalemate, a complete rout star. Across the stars, occupied worlds heard the news. For the first time, the iron grip of the Dominion trembled. And rebellion began to spread like wildfire. Sparks of revolution. On the jungle world of Velnir, the enslaved Hesterii, once warriors, now broken under the Dominion's rule, listened to intercepted broadcasts of humanity's victory. On the desert moons of Threxos, smuggled hollow footage of the Zorvath dreadnought's destruction played in the shadows, fueling whispers of resistance. On Dominion-occupied Earth itself, hidden cells of human survivors stirred. The war wasn't over. Humanity still fought. And for the first time, they had hope. The rebellion takes shape. Aboard the Sovereign Dawn, Admiral Cole stood before a growing fleet, no longer just human and Vierak ships, but vessels from species long thought broken. The Hysteriae, seeing a chance for vengeance, had sent warpacks of their own. The Threxian smugglers brought supply lines and intelligence. Even the secretive Dalver Syndicate, expert saboteurs, pledged their assistance. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were becoming a movement. A rebellion. And now? They needed a target. #### the Dominion's darkest secret. While coordinating with rebel spies, Vasquez uncovered something disturbing. For centuries, the Zorvath Dominion had projected itself as an empire built on sheer military dominance. But that wasn't the full truth. There was something deeper. Something hidden. The Dominion's core power wasn't just their advanced technology or overwhelming fleet strength. It was a hidden power source, one that shouldn't exist. They're using something unnatural, Okoye said, analyzing encrypted Dominion data. Something alive. Kane leaned forward. Explain. Their reactors, their advanced weapons, it's all linked to a single, central facility. She zoomed in on a system deep in Dominion territory. A place called Kryn Prime. The more they dug, the worse it got. Kryn Prime wasn't just a power station. It was a prison. And inside? The Dominion's most closely guarded secret. An ancient intelligence. A being of raw energy, enslaved, its power drained to fuel the war machine. If the rebellion wanted to truly cripple the Dominion, they had to go to Kryn Prime. And they had to free whatever was inside. #### the mission, a suicide run. The plan was madness. Kryn Prime was deep within Dominion space, guarded by an armada. Even getting close was nearly impossible. But Kane, Takeda, and a hand-picked strike team were going in anyway. If we do this, Cole warned, there's no coming back. Kane smirked. Good thing we don't believe in retreat. They had to know the truth. And if the Dominion was hiding something powerful enough to turn the tide of war, then humanity was going to steal it. The rebellion had its target. Kryn Prime, hidden deep within the Dominion's heart, wasn't just a power station. It was the key to everything. The lifeblood of the Zorvath war machine. The source of their impossible technological dominance. And inside? A nightmare waiting to be unleashed. #### the infiltration. The strike team, Kane, Takeda, Vasquez, and a squad of elite human and VRAC operatives, approached Kryn Prime under the cover of a hijacked Dominion supply ship. The plan was simple: slip in, disable defenses, and extract whatever the Dominion was hiding. The reality was anything but. As soon as they breached the outer perimeter, Dominion AI defenses came alive. Turrets spat plasma, sentry drones swarmed, and automated security gates slammed down. This is way too much security for a power station, Vasquez growled as she hacked into the control grid. Takeda cut through enemy guards with brutal efficiency. Kane took point, moving like a ghost through the darkened corridors, instinct screaming that something wasn't right. And then they reached the core. #### the horror of Kryn Prime. At the heart of the station was a containment chamber, vast and pulsing with an unnatural glow. Inside it, a being of living energy, writhing in agony, It was ancient. Beyond comprehension. A sentient force of pure power, shackled in containment fields, its essence drained through conduits that fed directly into the Dominion's weapons, starships, and artificial intelligences. Okoye's voice crackled over comms. My God, they didn't create their technology. They're stealing it. Extracting it from this thing. The truth hit like a thunderbolt. The Zorvath had never been the superior force. They were parasites. Their empire thrived not through innovation, but through the enslavement of something far older than themselves. And now humanity had a choice. #### the impossible decision. Releasing the entity could cripple the Dominion. Without its power, their fleets would collapse, their technology rendered inert. The rebellion could win the war in an instant. But there was a problem. The entity wasn't just imprisoned. It was angry. Vasquez scanned the readings, her face pale. If we break these restraints, we don't know what it'll do. Takeda checked his blade. Doesn't matter. We came to end the Dominion. But Kane hesitated. He could feel the presence within the chamber, pulsing in the back of his mind. It wasn't just a power source. It was something more. Something intelligent. Something vengeful. ### the betrayal. As they debated, the Dominion arrived. The doors burst open in a storm of gunfire, and through the smoke strode Supreme Warlord Ketzer himself. Towering, monstrous, clad in ceremonial war armor, his presence alone sent a wave of dread through the team. You think you've won? Ketzer snarled. You think your defiance means anything? His forces swarmed the chamber. The rebellion strike team was pinned. There was no escape. Ketzer's cold, reptilian eyes locked onto Kane. You do not understand the power you tamper with, human. His voice was a growl of contempt. This entity is not your salvation. It is your destruction. Kane clenched his fists. Then why keep it locked up? Ketzer's expression darkened. Because the last time it was free, it burned an empire far greater than ours. And in that moment, Kane knew, this wasn't just a weapon, It was a god of war. ### the final choice. Alarms blared. Kryn Prime was on the verge of collapse. The team had to make a decision, now, 1. Destroy the facility, ensuring the Dominion's power was crippled but keeping the entity locked away forever. 2. Release it, unleashing an unknown force upon the galaxy. Vasquez looked to Kane. Your call. Time slowed. Kane took one last look at the entity, its swirling energy forming shapes, as if trying to communicate. Then he turned, raised his rifle. And made his choice. ### the aftermath, humanity ascendant. The battle ended in fire. Kryn Prime was no more. The Dominion's power shattered overnight. Fleets malfunctioned. Weapons turned to dead husks. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds rose in revolution. The war was over. Or at least, this one was. For humanity, the impossible had been done. They had not only survived the stars. They had conquered them. And now? Now the galaxy would never forget the name of Earth. The age of the Dominion was over. The age of humanity had begun. ### epilogue, a new threat? But deep in the void, something stirred. Something watching. Something waiting. And it had finally noticed humanity.